today's video is all about that picture that was on the Bungie store page for the collector's edition of the final shape. And all we had access to was, of course, 2 pages, but we still were able to get information from those 2 pages. And like I said in the video, the first page was about those 2 mysterious unknown characters, RS and H and W, and then the second page was Ido and her notes, trying to figure out what was happening in that conversation, also talking about her, I guess, investigating Mercury and talking about that. Also kind of revealing that more likely than not, it's not coming back next season. And I made that video before the whole reveal, I think last night, I don't know when exactly it happened, first season of The Wish. By the way, I did not see the cutscene for that, I've only seen the picture. But I mean, even from that alone, right, we kind of have a good idea that Mercury's not coming back. So Ido says that at the time of her writing her notes, Mercury is still gone. And like I said in my video, the collector's edition is supposed to be read usually near the end of the final season. I mean, to be fair, this is going to be like a 7-month-long season, so who knows how far away that's going to be. But it's usually near the end of the last season before the expansion, and also maybe for some people who get it late during the launch of the final shape. So if Mercury is still gone in that lore book, then it was kind of guaranteed for me anyway that we weren't going to be getting it back next season, which it does look to be the case. She does make a link to the Vex, and I'm actually gonna, because I'm very confused by this, and I think the confusion is from a lack of context. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the piece of the page that is about that. It's very, very short. So she says, from the context, I guess, about whatever that first conversation was that was on the first page, some sort of computational assistance, there appears to be some okay, this is actually a tongue twister. Etymological, I'm just going to go with that, overlap with the names of Vex mines. Something to investigate later, perhaps. So she doesn't even really go into detail about it. She just points out that there seems to be a connection with the Vex, which, going over everything in the first page, in that first conversation, I really don't see it myself. But the main focus and the main thing that's interesting for me is definitely the first page, and that's probably where I'm going to spend the majority of this discussion. Before I get into that, I am going to just get another... Let's just play another song. Okay. So this, if it's a bit scuffed, I do apologize. I was gonna try and spend more time on I was gonna try and spend more time fleshing out everything, but a lot of time went into production stuff like stream transitions and in that intro that I actually had at the start. Okay, so let's get back to this first page. So to summarize the first page again, it was very basic up front. You have these 2 characters, RS and H and W. We don't know what their race is, we don't know what their actual names are, but they're talking about the gardener. Mainly H and W is. And H and W is talking about the fact that they're watching the gardener, presumably given golden ages. That's the implication I got from reading everything. But regardless, she's letting different factions make these mistakes and cause errors. Okay, I just deafened myself. Thanks. So I'm going to read out the part of this that's actually relevant to that. So again, because the conversation is at the very end of the conversation, we are missing context, and literally page 1 begins on the end of a sentence, so we don't even have full access to the first sentence on this page. But we have a faction called Bountiful/Swarm on their path to their great fatal error. It, and by it I believe they're talking about the gardener, it did not stop the conquerors/primacy/sovereign from using the gifts it granted for subjugation. Are we to accept that these 2 were meant to happen? If you reject the notion that destruction can be a final shape, how are we to accept that the gardener allowed us to make such grievous mistakes? And that is pretty much everything that is talked about in regards to these other factions that are, I guess, going down the dark side. But what I will say is that I can kind of have a good guess as to who these factions are. Well, mainly who they're not for the first one anyway. So the first faction is this bountiful / swarm faction. And if you were to kind of think about it, unless it's some random race that we've never heard of before, there are only two possibilities that I can think of, that being the Vex and the Hive. Now, the words bountiful and swarm do, to a certain extent, apply to the Vex. And, I mean, they are bountiful and they kind of, I guess they do kind of swarm. And the word error itself, I mean, you can kind of connect it to the Vex, whatever, the great fatal error. But, again, it's super vague. I can't tell you if it is or isn't. What I can do, though, is I can pretty confidently say that it is most likely not the Hive. And I'm going to tell you why later on in this page, because there's actually evidence that pretty much confirms that it's not the Hive. Okay. Now, as for the Conquerors / Primacy / Sovereign, the fact that they use the gifts that the Gardener gave them for subjugation. So what can we take away from looking at this faction? So first of all, we have the fact that they're conquerors. Okay. That explains, I guess, their actions and maybe their ideology / lifestyle, if you really want to go into it. You have the primacy. Primacy is the name of a leadership role within a church. And then you have sovereign, meaning obviously like a ruler or a king. Okay, I might pull up a picture. How about we pull up a picture? So, in my opinion, there's only one faction that I believe that this can be, and that is these boys. And I'm going to tell you why. So the reason why I believe this faction, these conquerors, the primacy, and the sovereign are the Black Fleet is for the easy reason, which is that it just makes the most amount of sense. But I will tell you, I will break everything down exactly why I think this is the case. Okay, so let's start off with conquerors. Well, I personally am of the opinion that they're not like the Hive or the Winnower in that they're just wiping out every single Golden Age. Their focus is very clear. It's the Gardener, it is the connection with the Veil, and I think that has a lot to do with why they didn't just bulldoze all of the colonies like completely flat. Well, partly because I don't actually think that they did a lot of that damage. So to start us off with conquerors, I think that regardless of how much destruction the Black Fleet has caused, the fact is that from an ideological standpoint and point of view, the Black Fleet follows a version of the sword logic, which is a conquering, that's just the way it is. The second thing, again, is of course that the Black Fleet did cause a lot of destruction. Now, we weren't able to... This isn't like the Hive and the Books of Sorrow, where you could go and you could try, oh yeah, Oryx killed these guys, and then Savathun killed these guys. We don't have that kind of track record or that history available to us. But we do know that they were present for the Whirlwind. We know the Hive were present there too, but we do know that they were present for the Whirlwind, and like I said, they are going to be chasing the Traveler, so if the Traveler is at a Golden Age, when they get there, they're probably going to wipe it out while they're there anyway. And at the end of the day, right, they're going for the final shape. And if you're going for the final shape, what are you trying to do? It's very simple. You're trying to lay claim to ownership of the universe because you're going to remake it with your rules and your boundaries. So you're kind of conquering the universe. Again, I'm going really deep into this, but if I literally had to explain perfectly every single reason why I think that this faction are the Black Fleet, That's what I would say for the Conqueror's part of it. The next part is the primacy. Can I just play the song, dude? Can you play the song, please? Okay, there we go. I don't like that song. I don't like that song. Okay, we're gonna pick a different song. Perfect. Okay. Next reason. Primacy. Cool. Well, again, very simple. We know that the Black Fleet and the Pyramid Race religious, very religious. The interesting thing though with the Black Fleet and the Pyramid Race is that they actually have two religions. They have the first religion, which is of the Gardener. Now I'm actually just gonna quickly go back to the first picture. And this is a very, obviously, you know, we never got to go here. Who knows if it ever ended up looking like this. With that being said, you do have these statues of the Gardener. And I think at this point, who else could this be? I mean, I'm not really going to spend this discussion stream debating the Gardener and the statue, but let's just say, for argument's sake and for the point of my discussion, that this is the Gardener. The Gardener very clearly is in a place of importance in their culture. We even know that from the cutscene, they worshipped, quote-unquote, the Gardener as their god of life, which, of course, that was being a reference to the Traveler, but we can also, you know, because we look into things, we can also connect that to the actual character, the Gardener. We know for a fact that they worshipped the Traveler / Gardener as their god of life. Okay, that's religion 1. That's religion 1. But they also had a second religion. And that was after the fall. They turned on the Gardener. Now, it could have been a deception. I think it was a deception from whatever was speaking from inside the veil. But when they decided to get their final shape, it wasn't just, yeah, we're gonna do this to the universe. Yeah. No. They straight up believe, and they believed then and they believe now, that the Gardener was their enemy. The Gardener was the reason behind suffering. They effectively joined and agreed with the Winnower's argument as to why the Gardener is bad. And that is very evident in the Witness cutscene, where just look at the language the Witness uses. You promise them life as you have for so many before. The universe makes us perpetrators and victim, whatever the line is. It's very clear that they see the Gardener now with the sense of enmity. So why am I saying that they have a second religion? It's very simple. Again, the evidence, which is inside of their architecture. That being, pull up the next picture. So this is very scuffed, okay? But these swords are all pyramid ship related, except for the middle one, which is the Winnower sword, at least from the concept art of the character who I believe is the Winnower. This is actually from the 9. This is from the Falling Guillotine sword, which, for the record, is pyramid ship based. Same thing with this. This is actually the other half of the Falling Guillotine from that same picture. And this is literally from pyramid ship architecture. And that isn't even all of it. And these swords, as I explained in a video, are effectively the crosses of their religion, which is a version of the sword logic. And the reality, whether or not you really want to completely go on board with what I'm talking about, is that they do follow a version of the sword logic. Now, it isn't perfect, because necromancy is considered acceptable. The word salvation completely goes against the sword logic. And even the Witness's version of the final shape is not the Winnower's version of the final shape. So it's like It's like you have the religion about God and Jesus, but then at the same time you have the Protestants and the Catholics and the Orthodox whatevers. They're all very different, but they kind of are connected. So you can consider like that. It's like, think of it like the Black Fleet are Protestant and the Hive are Catholic. Whatever. Okay, cool. So where does the primacy come into this? Well, primacy, the religious leader, I think there's only one answer for that. It is this figure here. And it's interesting again because primacy is linked to a singular entity or person in a role of leadership. And again, you have the Black Fleet with the one figure with the role of leadership. So again, I know I'm going deep into it, but you do have the religious aspects of things, and you do have a character who can fit that mold very well. You even have religious symbology and terminology with the witness and its disciples. And I think even some of the tormentors' names, I think it's like the reverence or the whatever of the witness. There is a religious atmosphere surrounding this character. So again, I think that is applicable to that. And then we come to the third name, which is the Sovereign. If you know me, you know where I'm gonna go with this. I just did the wrong thing. That's really good. Okay, cool. So we have these statues. Okay, cool, nice. And back in the day when I looked at this picture, I said the biggest thing about this picture is that it shows a culture and a civilization and a history. And part of that culture, I believe, was the king and queen. And I believe that this is the sovereign that is being talked about. Now, at the end of the day, whether I'm right or not is completely irrelevant because we're lacking so much context from this collector's edition that it doesn't really matter. All of it is speculation. Your speculation. But for the sake of just having fun, right? If I had to explain every single reason why I think that Conqueror's primacy sovereign faction are the Black Fleet, it's, you know, for the sovereign part, it's this king and queen. And from a basic standpoint, this king and queen here, obviously this was concept art released, I believe, sometime after Beyond Light. And at first, we just assumed that it was all nothing, right? No, I didn't, but, you know, like, we didn't know for a fact that we didn't know how much of it was actually used, right? I knew for a fact it was definitely for Destiny 2, because, I mean, like, look at it, right? But at the same time, we didn't know how much of it was used. And I've said this so many times before, but all of that changed when on Europa I discovered that these stands here made it into the game. And it's in the first week of the EXO challenge, which is survival. And when you're going around and you need to go to the fires to warm yourself up, these are the fires. And I believe it's, I can't remember which one of these two it is, but whatever. So I was like, okay, so these statues for a fact were used, at least a part of them were used. Cool. And then, later on, I discovered, thanks to a friend of mine, during Season of the Haunted, that using a program called Charm, which is used to rip textures from the game files, the set of trinkets that are on Eris's desk on the moon, you know, like her little things that she wraps around the guns and all that, cool, yeah, whatever, they were ripped from the game files. And I know I've shown this before, but I will show again, for the sake of this stream, those textures. So we have some rope that we used to tie around the things, okay? And by the way, I'm pretty sure that these ropes were also used to be tied around the mummified bodies in the pyramid ships as well. And, okay, interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, whatever, nice. And then we get this. And I'll just pull up the, I have a different version of this, it's a bit easier. Just zoomed in. There we go. And here you go. From the game files, you have the king and the queen. And I mean, I don't think I really need to. I don't think I really need to do this, but let me pull it up. There you go. They even have the thingies, you know, the whatevers. Cool. And that's when I realized, oh dang, okay. This wasn't just concept art. This wasn't even concept art that made it to 3D models that were then scrapped. This went from concept art to 3D models to in the actual game textures. Now, I was told, and I cannot confirm this because I never saw it, but in the Chantry of the Darkest Hour, the Church of Nezarec, in the final mission of Season of the Haunted, when you're going through the Chantry, in one area of the mission, there's multiple levels. And you can, I think, go up maybe like the first 2 levels. I can't remember. But then the third one, whatever. But there's a whole level that you can't have access to. You can't jump up that high. And apparently, some of the mummified statues, or the bodies, sorry, some of the mummified bodies in that mission had these around them. But again, I never saw it, so I cannot confirm that. My point being, when I'm making links between the word sovereign to the king and queen and the pyramid ships and the race, there's very solid evidence to back that up. But just for the giggles, if you were to ask me, who's the king? Well, I can give you 2 answers. I can give you the original answer, which I believe was the original answer, and possibly a newer version. I don't know. The first original answer that I would have given you is, again, very simple. It's Nezarec. Nezarec is very interesting as a character, and I'm not going to make this whole stream about Nezarec, but I actually had a chunk of this in the original script for my video, and I ended up cutting it out to save bloat. Nezarec was introduced in-game before the concept of, before the Winnower was name-dropped, and before the Witness was introduced as a character. Nezarec, his lore completely, like his helmet lore, completely goes against everything that we've seen of him so far. Everything. And then you have the fact that the Moon Pyramid was his original ship. You have the fact that he had a church made for him in that ship. And this wasn't like Rolk with his little Louvre souvenir memorabilia that he like blue tacked onto the wall, right? This was straight up rooms. It was big, man. It was big. And it was made from pyramid architecture. And before I'm missing anything, oh, also, which a room that I believe, and again I can't confirm this, but a room that I believe is connected to the Nezarec's Whisper glaive is this. Is this room here. And in my headcanon, if you were to read the Nezarec's Whisper glaive lore, this is the room that Eris ends up in. But that's just my own headcanon, whatever. Okay. Let me just go back to my notes here just so I know exactly what I'm... Okay. Yeah. So considering that Nezarec's symbol are on the stand, it's on the sands. Considering that he has a dedicated church in the Moon Pyramid. Considering that in Season of the Plunder, his artifacts contain, and I quote here, this is a quote, pure darkness. considering that the Whispers, which I believe to be the souls of the Pyramid Race, hung around those artifacts, and they whispered and all that, considering that in the statue, and I showed this in my last stream, considering in Root of Nightmares, the statue of his original form, before he became Nesquick, considering there are whispers hanging around that statue, considering that in all of Nezaric's Lightfall lore, there is a lot of whispering going on, and considering that in the Moon Pyramid itself, which also, by the way, is full of whispers just by itself, that in the Lightfall lore, when somebody tried to go in and they were desecrating his body to cut it up, the whispers started hissing at them. Considering all of that evidence, I do believe, and considering again that he literally had his own ship and whatever, I do believe there is evidence to support that he was the original king of the Pyramid Race. But what did we get in the end? I don't even have it in my folder, but maybe I can just pull it up real quick. I should have it in this other folder though. If I don't really care. It hurts the soul. I will pull up this picture though. I do have this one available. I can... Okay. But anyway, you know what happened, right? We got the dude, the big boy, the big Chungus himself. So, who else do I think the Sovereign could be? Maybe the Witness. And while I was making that original script, I had a theory, and it was so cool, dude. I kid you not, I want it to be true so badly. Even though I would prefer Nezaric to have been the original king character, if they end up doing this, which I'm not saying they will, I would be okay with that. What if? Because here's the thing. There's always the king character, right? That's whatever. There is nothing about this, the queen. There is nothing. There is no information at all. Nothing, right? Well, we know that... I'll tell you. I'll show you. What if the king and the queen... Now, I know what you're thinking. Dude, it's all of the Pyramid Race. And you're right. And yet there's only two main voices. One male voice and one female voice. What if? Because the thing is, this isn't like, this isn't like Split where there's like 50 personalities fighting for control. And... if it was just the one dude who was originally, like, who was in control, and I don't think that this is just a brand new being either. I do think this thing has the memories and the personalities of at least one or two people who did originally exist. And the fact that it's two, okay. What if you have all the race inside the body to make the body, but the two leading personalities are the king and the queen? And then you connect that with the primacy. That would be cool. But again, I'm going super deep into this, right? That's the point of this stream. I would never put this in a script because it would blow for too long. But so we talked about this faction called Conquerors / Primacy / Sovereign. And I believe that it's the Black Fleet. I explained the Conqueror's point. I explained the primacy and the religious point. And I've even gone super dark, deep lore mode into the Sovereign point. And then to top it off, you have the fact, okay, so it gave them gifts. That being the Gardener. That means one thing. It means a golden age. The Black Fleet and the Pyramid Race had a golden age. Cool. And it used them for subjugation. There's only one faction in the game that is connected to the term subjugation, and it's the Pyramid Race and the Pyramid Ships. And so, I believe that that is that. And now, for some of you, when you were reading that lore, if you've seen it, or you watched my video, or you've listened to me speak, you might be thinking to yourself, but dude, I could have guessed this ages ago. I know. I know. But I wanted to properly spell it out exactly. So that's that. We have this faction who I believe are the Black Fleet. Cool. Okay. Now I'm going to go back. Cool. Nice. Okay. I'm going to move down a bit. By the way, everybody, if there's anybody asking questions, I said at the start of this, but I'm kind of getting my spiel out of the way about this extended discussion, and then that way I can go through and I can then just do all the questions, and we can just go full, like, conversation mode. Okay. So next up, we have these two characters, Rn and H&W. And the interesting thing is that they know about the gardener. We don't know a lot about her. We don't know how much they know, but they know about the gardener. They also know about the concept of a final shape. That's actually interesting for a very specific reason, the final shape part of it, which is that, as far as I am aware, the only reason the Black Fleet learned about the idea of a final shape and getting that was because of the veil. This faction proves that you don't need the veil to understand and learn about a final shape. So they learned about the final shape from somewhere else, and they made their own version of it. Okay. What's also interesting is that Ido says that that conversation log... I'm just going to read the thing. In any case, this is from Ido. In any case, the concept of the final shape has worn many faces. From your encounters with the disciples of the Witness, we know that they all had their own understanding of this concept, that they all saw what they wished to see in it. But this communications log appears to predate all of them. If I am correct, and the parties communicating are among the Witness's precursors, then this may be the concept's original form. So, this is before the disciples. You know what else that means? That means that the Hive are not that first faction, the Bountiful Swarm. Why do I say that? The Hive only existed because of Rolk. Because the Witness sent Rolk to basically force the Worm God's hand. Also taking Zeta, which is the Worm God present in Rolk's pyramid. So if this conversation log is before any of the Witnesses, and of course Rolk was the first disciple, then yeah, it's not the Hive. So again, that leaves only potentially the Bountiful Swarm being the Vex. But again, actually, and that would nearly make sense if that was the Vex, because Ido mentions that link with the Vex Mines. I don't know. The next thing that I'll talk about real quick is, and I mentioned it in the video, is this concept of the original Golden Ages being way more powerful than the later on ones. Now, before I had any idea that there were any factions before the Pyramid Race that were given a Golden Age, I entertained the thought that the Pyramid Race might have been the first ones to get a Golden Age. Because the fact is, bro, they are broken. And especially considering the fact that the Black Fleet, the ships, were made... Oh, actually, I completely forgot. I'm a Bingus. Wait a minute. I'm a stinky Bingus. Beep, 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 beep. Gotta go back. 1 second. So this picture here, from Dima... What was his name? Oh, I'm gonna get in big trouble if I forget his name. It's Dima something. But anyway... The Bungie artist himself said that these pictures, and I'll pull up the others as well that I have from this set. This one necessarily isn't, but I'm just gonna pull them up anyway because it's fun, you know. were places of worship and ritual and gathering. So again, this confirms that religion with the pyramid race. The difficult thing, though, is that, like I said, the pyramid ships were made before the fall to the darkness and the veil. So what religion are these supposed to be for? Now, obviously, you can get rid of this thing because Rolk decided to be, I'm going to blue tack my trophy onto the temple. Look at me. Okay, yeah, we don't care about that. As for the rest of it, it could have been part of worshipping the gardener. And then, but maybe they made this after the fall. We don't know. Anyway, I wanted to point that out. So the fact is that the Black Fleet is stupid powerful. It's the most powerful faction, the most powerful entity apart from the Gardener and Winnower that we've seen. And I would say even more than the Nine, because in Nine lore from season of whatever, Gambit Prime, Joker's Wild, whatever, season of Gambit, season of Bingus, there's 9 lore that talks about the, the falling veil or whatever, whatever. They're talking about the pyramid ships basically coming in. The 9 fear the Black Fleet. That's what's established. At least the one faction within the 9 do. And they got that technology during their golden age. Imagine if that was every single golden age. Here's the thing. The Black Fleet, we can all agree, would easily decimate the Hive. Now, I would love to see Oryx using that like main weapon in his dreadnought. Like when he like slams a sword down and then it sends. I would be very curious to see if the Black Fleet can actually stand against that. But apart from that, obviously, if it was a ship battle, fleet battle, you know he's gonna win. And yet, every single golden age that we've heard of coming into contact with the Hive, just bye-bye, GG. Okay. You have the fact that Savathun says that they were blessed by the light. You have, in my opinion, them messing with the light, causing potentially natural disasters. You have their knowledge about the Gardener, knowing what she looks like, and I do believe they knew what she looked like. I do believe she appeared to them. Now, I actually think that it's more likely that she appeared in dreams than in person, but that's whatever. But have you noticed that in the future, if you go to a lore that takes place after that ancient cutscene that we got, the Black Fleet and the Pyramid Race, and even after this lore with RS and H&W, nobody knows who the Gardener is. Nobody knows. Like, you had in the Witch Queen Collector's Edition, you had Ikora and I can't remember who else it was, maybe Osiris or some dude, talking about, they mentioned Unveiling, and they talked about the Gardener and the Winnower, but they were talking about them as the characters in the story. They weren't talking about them as the actual characters in the game. Asa, in that cutscene with the Black Fleet, talks about the Gardener as a character in the world. This lore talks about the Gardener as a character in the world. That knowledge was lost. At least I think it was. You have, again, look at the Books of Sorrow. You have the darkness that is the deep, right? Now they call it the deep, but they do also acknowledge that the deep is the darkness. So why don't they call the Traveler the sky? Isn't that interesting that people think that the Traveler itself is the Gardener, being the sky or the light, and yet the worm gods, who would know far more than anybody about light and darkness, they don't call the Traveler the sky. They call it the sky's bait star, being like a weapon or a tool. The Traveler is the light's tool. And so if the Gardener and the Winnower are the ones who control the light and darkness, then why would the Traveler itself be the Gardener? But that knowledge, again, I think has been lost. It's either lost or it's been kept from everybody. And I think Golden Age-wise, the reason why Golden Ages weren't given that knowledge. Again, look at the Fallen. They call the Traveler the Great Machine. They had no idea who the Gardener was. You have the initial concept for the first cutscene of Destiny. I know, by the way, this song in the background's been looping, but I kind of think it fits the atmosphere, so it's fine. You have the initial concept for the cutscene for Destiny 1's first cutscene. And I'm just going to pull it up because I do have it here for sure. For sure. This is a good one here. Right. I should be showing what I want to show you. Yeah, here we go. Again, this is from that initial cutscene. And as you can see very clearly, this is concept art for the Gardener. And this is the exact same pose. So this is the Gardener. Cool. That's the Gardener. Veiled woman. Veiled woman. GG. Okay, cool. Anyway. So, my belief is that after the Black Fleet fell and the Pyramid Race became the Witness, that the Gardener knew that she had to dial it back. And so from then on, it didn't give as powerful Golden Ages. Now, obviously, that meant that they had a worse time against the darkness and its forces. For sure. Obviously. Right? But at the same time, it made sure that there would never be a threat as big as the Black Fleet again. And even the Hive, again, as powerful as the Hive became, I don't think they were as powerful as the Black Fleet. I don't. So my theory was that after the Black Fleet Golden Age, the BFG, that the Golden Ages got weaker. And the fact that we know that, I do believe that it is pretty much confirmed that, it's pretty much confirmed that HNW and RS, their consensus faction, right? Excuse me. The fact that they know about the Gardener, that they know about the final shape, that they're going after a final shape, they believe that they're strong enough that they can get it. That they have been existing since before the Witness and the Black Fleet, and they are aware of it, and they're tracking them, they're keeping their eye on them. The fact that they're potentially tied to the Eye of Another World Helmet's lore, talking about this other faction, this other world that warned us back in 2017 about the Dusk of the Pyramid. There is no way that a faction like this, in my opinion, can get this powerful without having a Golden Age. Now, the first thought that comes to my mind, let me just make sure I'm not missing anything else. We'll open this picture here. This is also concept art for that same cutscene, by the way. And I will also pull this up. You can see, does it matter? You see the blue lady and then the thingamajiggy here. Okay, cool. The first thought that came to my mind when I was talking about how powerful this consensus faction were, right, is the Nine. The Nine are pretty powerful. The Nine can't get a final shape, dude. They can't even seemingly leave the solar system. They're stuck. They're contained to their own little realm. I would argue that this faction is beyond them. Now, sure, okay, fine. You stick these guys inside the Nine's realm. Obviously, the Nine are probably gonna have an advantage, but like, you know, it's different. But you know what I'm trying to say. Okay. So my opinion and my theory from this, and again, dude, everything that I've been talking about for nearly the last hour is just from this, bro. It's from this. I know. This is what I do. Okay. This faction, I believe, were given a golden age before the Witness, before the Black Fleet, and I would argue they had somewhat of a positive relationship with the Gardener. Obviously, if they had a golden age and they're not with the Gardener, then the Gardener left them, right? It seems if that was the case, it was a bit of an amicable departure. They understand the concept of a final shape, but still it is a selfless one that is very much linked with the gardener's own vision, where there's no evil or suffering and everybody's getting along and whatever. Okay, cool. We don't know, because so far the only way that we've seen to be able to get a final shape is to actually like get inside the Traveler and seemingly put the gardener at risk. We don't know if they'd be willing to do that, and they might be willing to do that. And I think that actually would be tied to what H&W was talking about with the gardener making mistakes. Maybe you could tie that into their ideological belief or their suspicion that the gardener should not have the keys to the universe. It's the age-old argument of God allowing suffering and sin. It reminds me of that. This is going to sound really cringy, right? But it reminds me of a quote from Batman v Superman, which is, "If God is all powerful, then he cannot be all good. And if he is all good, then he cannot be all powerful." Whatever. Okay. Right. So, I think, yes, they had a golden age. They have a somewhat positive relationship with the gardener. At least they don't hate her, from the sounds of it. And they've been watching, and they're powerful enough to observe and not be destroyed. Now, again, we don't know if they're still around. The book, literally the last page, the next page of this lore book could literally be, "Oh, and by the way, we found the remains of their civilization." Okay, whatever. We don't know. My point is this. From everything I've just told you about this faction, if they're still around, these are big players. This isn't like Aphrodite's random pacifist faction outside of at the edge of the system that's like, "Oh yeah, I have like a bunch of I have my own mini guardian army that's just pacifists." Who cares? No, Bungie's probably forgotten about them anyway, right? If these guys did not get destroyed and they're still around, and they have the ability seemingly to get a final shape, at least enough to the point where they believe they can get it. These are actual valid players in this game. And that leads us to the Eye of Another World helmet lore. Again, it could have been retconned. Again, Bungie could have forgotten. The guy who wrote it might not even work there anymore. But it would be really cool. And that, as far as I am aware, is everything that I can tell you about this topic. I gave you a 10-minute video, and I gave you an hour-long stream. But I have literally exhausted everything that I can think of about this thing. But what's also interesting, actually, because I'm looking at the end of this lore, and Ido says that we can see in this log that H&W and RS, at least, were preoccupied with the concept of a higher purpose. That's exactly the same thing as the Pyramid Race. That's the exact same thing as the Pyramid Race. Where the whole thing with the Pyramid Race is, we have no purpose, we need to find one. And they ended up going to, the wrong place. They are basically like the good version of the Black Fleet in terms of their motivation and ideology, from the sounds of it. But that being said, they are still not content to just let the gardener do whatever. And why would they? So first of all, this is my final part of this topic, right? Final part, promise. We talk about the gardener allowing these factions to make these mistakes. Why did the gardener allow the Black Fleet to fall? Why did the gardener allow the hive to be made? Why does the gardener let collapses happen? 2 reasons. Very simple. First reason, the gardener and the light do not beat the darkness in a straight up fight. I would say 9 times out of 10. 8 if it's lucky, right? So the gardener is giving these golden ages knowing that they're going to be destroyed. So why does she do that? It's because the gardener's not human and we shouldn't treat her as human. This is literally a being made by mathematical chance with only one function and one purpose, which is to give life and to see it prosper and grow. That is why it changed the Flower game in Unveiling, and that is why it's given Golden Ages. It could know that literally 30 seconds after it gives a Golden Age, that Golden Age is going to get destroyed when it leaves. It's still going to give them. It literally cannot stop. And that ties into my video. Again, very short video, 5 minutes. Definitely recommend you checking it out. It's a 5-minute video called The Lie of the Gardener and the Light. And this is, again, connected to the Witness. You have the Lie card showing the Gardener in Season of the Witch. And then you have... And so what is the lie? Simple. The Witness says, you promised them life, but you delivered only death. That's the lie. The lie is that the Gardener's like, yeah, I'm going to give you Golden Age and everything, knowing that we're going to get slaughtered. But the Gardener can't stop. And what's interesting is that this is something that this faction, at least H&W anyway, were aware of. They saw it happen in real time. And I think that ties into the fact that, you know, even if they're kind of pro-Gardener, even if their ideologies are kind of along the same lines, they don't trust the Gardener with the keys to everything. Somebody has to get a final shape if there's going to be true peace, if there's going to be true salvation. And the Gardener is not the answer. Now, maybe RS knew all of this and it was just like, yeah, we're going to find out when we find out, when we get the final shape. You know, we can talk to the Gardener and find out, hey, why are you doing this? H&W actually really kind of messes them up. You know, they're like, what's going on here? And who knows, we don't know exactly what their ideology was, but depending on how pro-Gardener it was, you know, again, talking about their Golden Age and all that, this whole concept that, oh, everything's part of the Gardener's plan. Oh, the Hive were made. Oh, it's part of the Gardener's plan. It's going to work out. And oh, it's the Black Fleet. It's part of the Gardener's plan. But they're literally the most powerful thing we've ever seen, and they're slaughtering everybody. It's the part of the Gardener. But why? But the Gardener's been running away for the last 1,000. It's gonna. Don't worry about it. It's fine. And H&W can't accept that, and that bothers RS, which to me indicates an ideological thing going on here. It could be a religion. Who knows? But regardless of how pro-Gardener they are, the fact that they're aware of the Gardener allowing these bad things to happen, the fact that H&W at least raises the concern that if they don't get the final shape, somebody who probably shouldn't will, being like the Witness or the Winnower, that could destroy the whole universe, and the fact that both RS and H&W confirmed that this consensus was going for the final shape themselves, possibly at the Gardener's expense, to me shows that this faction, regardless of how pro-Gardener they were, still didn't trust her. And that's that is 100% how I believe we should be as well. And anyway, that concludes this discussion stream.